board. So I'll use this, and then if I have to switch up, then I'll just shout a little bit louder. But to Principal Banks, where'd she go? Principal Banks, thank you so much for opening up your high school facility to us. To Mayor Masters, thank you for having us in your beautiful city. To also City Commissioner Pardo, thank you so much for all that you have done. And to each and every one of you, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. And Commissioner Davis, who's coming down, thank you so much. And you know, Riviera Beach does have a little bit of a special place for me. You know, right along with Deerfield Beach. You know, when I first retired down here, I taught high school at Deerfield Beach, and then I also almost had the opportunity to be the city manager here at Riviera Beach. So this is an important town, and it was very important to me to find that common ground so that we could bring the vibrant Megadon facility here at Riviera Beach, because I believe that we can make this a jewel piece. I believe that we can bring economic prosperity here to the citizens of Riviera Beach and make this a center point. And show how we can have the private-public partnership in making life better for the citizens here in this great city. And I think that the future is ahead for this great city, and you can count on me to always be an advocate in all the efforts that you need. I will be a voice for you. So thank you so much. The reason why we're here, when I ran, I made a commitment. And that commitment is that each and every month that I would come back and I would speak with the constituents, and I would be before you, and I would tell you, you know, what have you seen in the previous month, because I think that's so important that we can make sure that the voting electorate is informed and educated about the things that are happening up in Washington, D.C. Because right now we are facing some of the most critical issues that you will ever see in this country will be facing. And I think that we have to have individuals that do understand, as you said, that our founding fathers meant for people to go to Washington, D.C. to be servants, and be citizen legislators, and truly be representatives. And that's what I seek to be. And we will continue to do this every month. We'll come back and meet in various locations in Palm Beach and also Broward counties, and I look forward to coming back to the Beach. So next slide. Okay, our district offices. Up here in Palm Beach, we have the district office that's located on Dixie Highway, just south of the intersection of Belvedere and Dixie. So if you have any concerns, please come by there. Our staff is there every day. If you're down in Broward County, our office down there is in Fort Lauderdale, right off the intersection of I-95 and Cypress Creek, in the giant bank building, right off of Andrews Avenue. So once again, please come by. If you're there, we are here to serve you. And what I tell people is that, you know, I really don't get hung up about congressional districts, especially when it comes to taking care of our veterans. We're there to do what is necessary to make sure that we hear your concerns. Next slide. This congressional calendar, I always like to show this to let people know the shaded parts of when we are in session. And as you can see, this is where we are. We have a full week that we're down here in our respective congressional districts. I'll head back up on Monday, and then we've got the little Memorial Day that I look forward to being down here in the district to celebrate Memorial Day, because we must always remember the men and women that have sacrificed so we can have our freedom. Okay, these are my committee assignments, and you know, I am very privileged to sit on the Armed Services Committee, which I think after 22 years, you know, in the United States Army, that'd be a no-brainer. One of the things we just went through last week, if you live a very boring life, you would have seen us on C-SPAN. We started at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning. We finished Thursday morning at 3 o'clock. And that was what they call the markup, the preparation of the National Defense Authorization Act, the Defense Appropriations Bill. And that's basically what it is. So this is how we're going to fund our military to make sure that our men and women have the best possible equipment, and also for the services that go to our men and women, being their health services and things of that nature. And I'll talk about some other things on that a little bit later. And the other thing you see is the Committee on Small Business. And I couldn't ask for a better committee to be on. Because when you drive through this district from Fort Lauderdale Airport all the way to Jupiter Inlet on Federal Highway, you see all of those closed storefronts. We have got to get small businesses back open and back operating. That's the economic engine in the United States of America. And if we don't set the conditions for them to be able to grow and hire Americans,
then we missing the boat. And I think you'll see a piece of legislation that we have out there right now that will help that. Next slide. Some of the major legislation over in the past 30 days that we've worked on. Here, we've got to reduce the spending and the growth of the federal government. That's why I voted against this health care exchanges being down at the state level. When you look at the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, it will produce 159 new government agencies and bureaucracies. And that means just an incredible growth of the government. And, people have to understand, who funds the government? Okay. And remember what I said, we have got to get our small businesses going again. So if we are taking the money out of real pockets, we can't have the investment, we can't have the ingenuity, we can't have the innovation. We can't have places like Vitamin that's growing if we have a bigger entity growing. Now, the other vote here, this was a time when I voted against my party. I was one of 4 Republicans that voted against this because I just did not see why we needed to be concerned about taking funds away from the construction of school-based healthcare centers. And so that's why I did. Took a little heat from it, but that's okay. Because I think the thing is that each and every one of you sitting in Washington, D.C. to read legislation and to be able to make an assessment and be able to come back and articulate the reason why I voted against it. $100 million over the course of 10 years is not a drop of water in the ocean. Especially when you know that the GAO sent out a report back in February and March that said there's about $200 billion of duplicative programs in Washington, D.C. That's where the focus should be. And that's why I was one of those 4 individuals that broke camp and voted against this legislation. Here's another big thing that we've got to do. Some of you all may have seen already in the news that I spent a little time at a gas station down in West Palm Beach. If we don't get serious about our energy independence, if we don't get serious about producing, consuming, and maybe even exporting the full spectrum of our energy resource in the United States of America, how many of you all remember back in the late 70s when we had the Saudi oil embargo? And some of us were out there on those even days and those odd days based upon the number on your tag. We created an agency called the Department of Energy back then, and the Department of Energy had one mission: to make the United States of America energy independent. That was the whole purpose of creating the Department of Energy in the late 70s. And here we are almost 40 years later, and we still have not gotten it. We have resources available to this country. And let me tell you the danger. Cuba has oil leases that they're already selling. And they're being bought up right now by a Spanish group called Repsol. And if you ever get a chance, and you can visit with the 7th District Commander of the Coast Guard, Rear Admiral Baumgartner, he will show you that those leases are about 10 miles from the international waterline of the United States of America, which means for Florida. And with the new technology called slant drilling, you can offset an oil rig, and up to 40 miles, you can slant drill into the outer continental shelf of the United States of America. Now, the other thing that you have to be concerned with is that the depths that Repsol is looking at drilling are deeper than what the Deepwater Horizon was. Now, if there is a catastrophic event, a slip will go right into the Gulf Stream, and it will come right to ground zero, Congressional District 22, which has 75 miles of pristine beaches and the 3rd largest reef system in the world. If someone is going to do the drilling off the coast of the United States of America, it should be us. Because we're we need to have the revenue sharing that comes to this state so they can improve the way of life for the citizens of this great state of Florida. Next slide. Some of the co-sponsored legislation that I've done here recently, things on budget and tax reform. This is a bipartisan piece here with Representative Richardson, Connie Mack here in Florida. Next slide. National security, bipartisan here with Representative Ted Deutsch. We're going to talk about this Pakistan thing a little bit because we need to change some things. Okay, we're sending, I think upwards to $3 billion this year to Pakistan. I think we've been played like a very bad fiddle by Pakistan. We need to do something about that. Here, National Guardsmen Reserve Disparity Act. You know, how many people here have served in the National Guard or Reserve? Okay. One of the things we have to do from September 11, 2001 on up to now, we need to have some type of parity for those people who have been serving as quote-unquote part-time soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen. We need to make sure that they have the right type of active duty equivalency so that they have the right type of retirement benefits and pay. Because right now there is a huge disparity between the time that they have spent on active duty and how they're recognized as opposed to someone that does spend a lot of time on active duty. Our National Guard and Reserve members have done yeoman's work on this 21st century battle, and we need to recognize that. Next slide. Okay, along the same lines, this is one of the pieces of legislation that we have introduced. Remember, our first piece of legislation was a 10% budget cut for the Department of Defense to pass. The House of Representatives 393 to 0. There's still a lot of people wondering how did that happen. But this is our second piece of legislation. It's called the Global Combat Zone Recognition Act. The thing that we must understand is that the combat zone is not just in Iraq. It is not just in Afghanistan. It is anywhere that a man and woman in our uniform is attacked, to include the DOD civilian. And if you think about what happened at Fort Hood, you think about what happened at a Little Rock recruiting station, you think about what happened in Frankfurt, Germany, at the airport where two of our airmen were gunned down, one was killed. You think about what could have happened at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then also what could have happened at Quantico. We need to send a message that we are aware of the fact that where we sit right now is part of this battlefield. And if you don't think that's true, then you were not paying attention to the news that just happened this past Saturday, right here in South Florida, with the money that was funneled over to the Pakistan Taliban. Now let me tell you what is very concerning to me about that. It was 10 years ago that Muhammad Atta and 5 or 6 other co-conspirators were also in Broward County, in Miami-Dade County. They bought them tickets to Lauderdale by the Sea. They took their flight money down to Opalaka. And here we are 10 years later, and that threat is still there. We have to recognize that no matter where our men and women in uniform are, and those DOD civilians, if they are targeted for attack, they need to have the same type of recognition as those men and women that are over there in Iraq or Afghanistan, and their families need to be taken care of just as well. So that's the purpose of this piece of legislation. Next slide. Now the other thing, the Small Business Encouragement Act. If we're going to talk about national security, then I want to talk about economic security. The thing is this, we need to provide the incentives for small business owners to get out there and hire Americans. So if you're a small business owner in the previous fiscal year, if you ever earned less than $20 million, and if you have less than 100 employees, we're talking about a $6,000 tax credit for every person that you hire off the unemployment rolls. Even better, if you live in a county that has double-digit unemployment, Palm Beach County, Broward County, then you get an additional $6,000 as well. We have got to incentivize, we've got to set the conditions for our small businesses to grow. And as you can see, that has bipartisan support. We have a lot of different chambers of commerce, to include the National Black Chamber of Commerce, to include the National Federation of Independent Businesses, that are supporting this piece of legislation. So hopefully we can get this thing to the House floor and get it voted on, and we can get it through to the Senate, because I'd like to see that take effect when we go into the fiscal year on 1 October. Next slide. Gas prices. This is where we are, and this is an incredible slope. You can see back here, January 2009, $1.84. This is where we are here, the national average at $3.91. The station I was at today, like I said, all the prices were just at or above $4. You know, there's a lot of talk about oil speculation. The thing is, if you want to reduce the impact of the oil speculators, reduce the uncertainty. You know, when people wake up and they see Tomahawk cruise missiles flying into Libya, that produces uncertainty. When people wake up and they see the turmoil that is happening in Egypt, all across the Middle East, that produces uncertainty. And that causes these people called speculators to do what they do. But if we get to the point where we can produce those resources, we can consume those resources, we can even export those resources, then the prices will start to go down. This is an opportunity for us to control the destiny as far as energy resources in the United States of America. I'm not just talking about oil. I'm talking about natural gas. I'm talking about hydrogen. I'm talking about nuclear. I'm talking about coal. I'm talking about biofuels. I'm talking about wind. I'm talking about solar. I'm talking about lithium. I'm talking about looking at the Department of Energy and remaking the Department of Energy. We should have energy resource zones all across our regions, all across the United States of America, where we can focus on what type of energy resource we should be developing in those zones. And make sure that they are properly compliant with the environment, make sure they are run safely. That's what we have to get to. It is time for a 21st century type of Manhattan Project when it comes to the development of our energy resources. Or else, this will remain, as you can see, at a level which is unacceptable. And guess what? That affects our economy down here in Florida. Okay? If gas is high, people aren't going to get in their vehicles and they're not going to drive down here and spend money. And that in turn affects the small businesses that we have now. So once again, we've got to set the conditions to improve the way of life. And the second, third order effects, you already see the price of groceries going up because all of those things get pushed to the consumer because of these truckers and our small businesses. They can't afford to have this gas. Next slide. Okay, you got to be absolutely proud about what the United States Navy SEAL, our Special Operations Forces, combined with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Nighthawks were able to do. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a cross-border, behind enemy lines, zero illumination, flawless raid operation. The whole thing with the UH-60 aircraft, what happened was the UH-60 aircraft comes in at high velocity, and in order for UH-60 to slow itself down, it does what we call a fantail. And as it fantailed, of course, the tail boom struck the wall there in that compound. And as the pilots were trying to get control of that helicopter, then you have the reverse action of the prop wash to start to come back up, and it blacked out the engines so that it had about a 20 to 25 foot hard crash. But the great thing is that you have what's called a QRF, a quick reaction force, that was on station. There to bring in another aircraft, and the mission continued on. Now the key thing is you got to get that tail moving back from Pakistan. Pakistan is already talking about how they may allow China to look at that tail. And there's a lot of classified information because that type of Black Hawk helicopter is a special helicopter, as I said, because it was used by the Night Stalkers. Now, this is the thing you have to understand. Where Osama bin Laden was residing is about 1,000 meters from their version of West Point. And the fact that he only had about 2 to 3 individuals that were quote-unquote guarding him, there was no threat in his mind. There are 3 things. Either it's ignorance, it's incompetence, or it's complicity. Any of those 3 is bad. All 3 of them put together is extremely bad. Now, I will tell you, I've spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan. The bad guys will come out of Pakistan. And they will continue to come out of Pakistan. That's why they have their sanctions. And one thing that a lot of people did not recognize had happened in the week leading up to us finding and killing Osama bin Laden, the president of Pakistan made a call over to Hamid Karzai, president of Afghanistan. And the purpose of that phone call was to try to convince him to not go into a long-term security arrangement with the United States of America, but instead join Pakistan and China. $3 billion American taxpayer money should not be going to Pakistan. As well, we have a very serious situation that's happening in the Middle East because Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, has gone into a reconciliation pact with Hamas. Now, why is that important? For one simple reason. Hamas has in its charter the destruction of the state of Israel. The United States of America sends American taxpayer dollars to the Palestinian Authority this time. We've got to cut that off right now as well. And we have to be very careful because there is a possibility in the United Nations this summer that they will have a declaration or a unilateral declaration of the Palestinian state. And until you deal with the terrorism in that situation with Hamas and some of the other entities that are there, Al-Quds Brigade of Islamic Jihad, you're creating a terrorist state. So we have to be very careful about that. Next slide. Okay, I continue to show this slide here because you need to understand the employment and unemployment curves. This is something that we have to deal with. You know, we've got to get Americans back to work. And the means by which we get Americans back to work is the economic policies that support job growth. And I'm not just talking about short term, I'm talking about long-term sustainable job growth. And if we don't understand that, then we're going to miss the boat. And that has a lot to do, you'll see later, with the ability of Social Security to be vital as we go ahead. And we'll talk about with the trustees, the report that they put out on Friday. Next slide. The other thing we have to be really concerned about are the deficits that we're running. And the deficits are simply the difference between revenues and spending. Right now, the average revenues that we're bringing into the United States of America, $2.2 to $2.3 trillion. The problem is the federal government is spending anywhere from 3.5 up to $3.8 trillion. So that's why in the past 3 years we have been running deficits of 1.42 trillion, 1.29 trillion, and the deficit for this year is supposed to hit 1.65 trillion, which of course drives the fact of the debt. It's not a revenue problem that we have in the United States of America. The problem is with us up in Washington, D.C. And if we don't curtail the spending there, you know, Bishop Masters, it doesn't matter what you're doing down in Riviera Beach. We're not going to be setting you up for success. And that's what we have to turn around. Next slide. And it's just the same here with the debt. Okay, everyone knows what happened to debt. The day we hit the quote-unquote debt ceiling. $14.3 trillion that we owe. Now, the thing that you must understand is very simple. That $14.3 trillion is 66% of our gross domestic product. History shows when you hit 80% of your debt to GDP, you're about to flatline. We've got to turn this around. And the only way we can turn this around is once again, we've got to make ourselves fiscally responsible of the Washington, D.C. Next slide. And you can see how our foreign debt has increased over the years, going back to 1970 up to now. $47% of our debt is held by foreign nations. Next slide. And that's wrong. And if you don't think that a country like China, having almost 1/3 of your debt, affects your foreign policy and your national security, I don't know what to say. It's a very, very dangerous situation. And the thing that you have to understand is that when the Soviet Union collapsed, a country like China understood one simple thing. You can be a communist country, but you can use capitalism as a weapon. And that's where we find ourselves. And if we're not careful, the world's largest blue water today will be flying under China's flag in the next 8 to 10 years. And 70% of the surface mass of the earth is, and it affects the sea lanes of commerce. You know, you think about the Port of Palm Beach. You think about the Port of Everglades. They brought in almost $99 billion in revenue last year. A lot of that revenue comes through the Panama Canal. Panama Canal will be expanded in 2014 to bring in larger cargo ships. But it's the Panama Canal who has been operated by Chinese contractors. Next slide. And this is what happens with the interest off their debt. Off our debt. It's a major threat. This is the concern. I mean, we can sit and we can take away the entire defense part of our budget, which, you know, as per our GDP, defense is only about 3.8% right now. But even if you do that, it will not have any sort of effect long-term on the debt and the deficit that we have in this country. You're going to have to do something on this side. And this is where it takes courage. This is where it takes people that will come down and not tell you what you want to hear. I got to tell you the truth. Because if not, then what do we leave for our children and grandchildren? That's the challenge we face. Next slide. And this is what is happening. They're outpacing our economy. And there's nothing right now unless we make some tough decisions. Matter of fact, just this past Friday, the Medicare Trustees Board and also Social Security Trustees Board came out and they said that in the year 2024, the Medicare Trust Fund is done. And then 12 years later, in 2036, Social Security Trust Fund is done. That was written in the USA Today on Friday. And what will happen as we get close to 2036 for Social Security is you're looking at benefits for seniors being cut by at least 20 to 22% if we don't start thinking about how we can make these programs stronger right now. But Medicare right now is threatening to not be here for us in future generations. Next slide. And these are what we're saying. Because we're living long. And we have an incredible retirement, and most importantly, right here. Next slide. In 1950, for every recipient of Social Security, there's about 16 workers. And you can see how it continued to drop and drop and drop. And there you are. Okay. So what we have to do is, as I said, we have to have the fiscal policies that can bring production back to this country, bring manufacturing back to this country, get our small businesses back hiring Americans. Because until we can bring this back up, I mean, that's the danger. As you can see, there's a change in our life expectancy. I mean, the Simpson-Bowles Commission recommended taking that retirement age from 65 to 69. And the effects that that does have on your debt and deficit curve. I mean, that's something we're going to have to look at as we go forward. Next slide. You're already seeing these things that are happening with Medicare. I had a great opportunity to go down and spend with the Coral Springs Medical Center or the Broward County Health Center. And this is what happens with the docs. One of the main reasons why the healthcare costs are high is we've got to do something about the catastrophic litigation. And we've got to do something about breaking down the restrictions by state under which the insurance companies are able to operate. Two of the biggest lobbying groups in Washington, D.C., trial lawyers and insurance. And until you can bring in good and fair competition in healthcare insurance, you're not going to be able to crack this whatsoever. Until you put patients in charge of developing their own insurance plans, and not have these state commissioners being the ones that are running it, it's not going to make a difference. Until you get doctors that are not practicing defensive medicine because they're so afraid of catastrophic litigation, it's not going to happen. So those are the type of things we have to do to try to reduce those healthcare costs. Next slide. A lot of people out there, single payer is much bigger. A lot of people are talking about this right here. But I want you to understand, you can tax those top brackets at 100% or even up to 150%, and you're still not going to make a difference As far as the budget, which I just told you, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2012 is $3.8 trillion. The deficit that we have right now in fiscal year 2011 is estimated to be $1.65 trillion. And the last thing I want to explain, small businesses don't operate at a corporate business tax rate. They operate at a personal income tax rate. So if you raise the taxes on them, what are you going to do to your fellow Americans? Next slide. All right. These are the 4 things that I believe you have to do. 4 things that you have to do. You have to have a balanced budget amendment. If there is any chance that we're going to be able to get ourselves fiscally responsible, is there any chance that we're going to be able to do this, the time is now to have a balanced budget amendment for the federal government. You've got to cap federal spending. Okay? It's so important to cap federal spending. Right now, our federal government is spending about 25% of GDP, and the estimates take it above 30% of our GDP. History shows 18 to 20%. That keeps it in line with the revenues that we're bringing in. You've got to cap that. Well, this is where I'm coming to. Now, this is the thing. You take the corporate business tax rate, you bring it down to 20 to 22%. You get rid of subsidies, you get rid of loopholes. You don't have that anymore. You flat tax out the corporate business tax rate. That's how you do it. And the last thing, I will tell you that it's very interesting that the CEO of GE is a private sector CEO, but he was also appointed to be an economic advisor in the president's administration. So I think we should. Okay, the last thing is you have to have a trigger. You have to have a trigger. You have to have a trigger. We're talking about 73 or 74 times we raise the debt limit. You need to have a trigger so that when you reach a certain percentage of getting the debt limit, you have automatic spending cuts to kick in, so we never have to come back and revisit. Those are the 4 types of conditions that I think have to happen for us to make sure that we are fiscally responsible as we move forward. Next slide. You know, we've got to do something about the Medicare. And the plan that says that if you're 55 or above, no changes. I'm 50 years old, and I know that there has to be some things that are going to have to change for me so that my daughters that are 18 to 14 can have this program later on in life. And as I said, 2024, that's it for Medicare if we don't do something to reform this program. You know, Social Security was a New Deal program, Medicare was a 1965 Great Society program. If we don't believe that we have to make adjustments to ensure that these programs remain viable as we go forward in the 21st century, then we're missing the boat. But this is the thing that we have to have. We have got to have targeted spending up in Washington, D.C. I'm not talking about just plain old across-the-board cuts. We've got to do the hard business of going in to all of these different agencies, and we've got to start looking for the fraud, the waste, and the abuse. And if a freshman congressman in the first 90 days could find $180 million of fraud, waste, abuse in the Department of Defense and get it to pass 393 to 0. I think other people can do that. And we've got to tackle illegal immigration. This is what it looks like. One ballot, $100 million per bill spent out. Next slide. That's what just $1 trillion will look like. Double stack ballots. And remember, we're talking about $14.3 trillion. It would take every man, woman, and child living in the United States of America right now write a check for about $46,000 in order to eradicate that debt. Next slide.
Got a question there.
I want to close with these three quotes. They came from 2006, and this is relating to the debt ceiling. Next slide.